Hi, everybody. We are starting a new section in Tanya, the last 13 chapters. So to start off on the right foot, a man was driving in a mountain, a Chassid, in the mountains of New York to a bungalow where his family was, and it's like 45 minutes before Shabbat, so he's in a hurry. Suddenly he sees alongside the road a man with a yarmulke, and seems that he needs help. So he pulls over, and right away he asks the man, what's his name? And how can he help him? So he needed some help. He helped him. Finally, when he finished helping him, he shook his hand and says, okay, I hope you're going to make it home before Shabbos. And the man says, no, I'm not even Jewish. My name is John. So he says, really, you're not Jewish? He says, yeah. So the Chassid says, so why are you wearing a yarmulke? He says, last year for my birthday, my grandma pulled out a yarmulke and says to me, this is my birthday gift to you. Anytime your car breaks, go out, put on the yarmulke, someone will stop to help you. It's not funny, Ali, huh? You heard it from me.
Well, I heard it. You know, right on Route 17 in New York, we were going up, I call it the bull run, because the bulls go to the cows. But on 17, they can't daven, because the big sign, no services on this road.
Thank you.
Horseback here.
Touche. Don't worry, I won't return.
So yarmulke is the symbol of Jewish person. Incidentally, when I was stuck in Jordan, I had to interact with a lot of people. So they kept saying to me, do not go with a yarmulke. Wear a hat. They don't mind a hat, but a yarmulke, they hate you and they will try to hurt you. So when I had a taxi driver for 2.5 hours and he was going through the main road, villages and communities, he insisted that I wear the hat, and it was very hot, and the hat reached the top of the ceiling of the car, so it was very uncomfortable. I couldn't lean back, so I had to bend. Only when we left towns and there was no man's land, literally desert, he would allow me for a couple of minutes, agree. And the reason is because if they see someone with a yarmulke, they can cause them trouble. Same as when I was in the airport. We were in the airport the next morning at the hotel. Finally, we arrived in a hotel at 12 midnight. So the first thing I wanted, I ran to the room. I got a room, take off my jacket and hat and go down to see an apple. A whole day we were under the sun, didn't eat. As soon as I got out of the elevator, the security guard for our group turned to me and says, go back, either buy yourself a cap here right in the gift shop or go and put the hat back. They hate a man with a yarmulke. So yarmulke is a symbol of Judaism, and one can ask why. Perhaps this upcoming study will assist us in having a better understanding.
What country was it?
Jordan.
Doesn't the Pope wear a head covering?
Yeah, what is
Not
it?
like our
What
young.
is it? What does it say in the Vatican?
But it's a
Red
beanie.
yarmulkes.
It's a beanie.
Huh?
What do they say in the Vatican? With all those red yarmulkes?
They say that when the Pope died, after when they came to prepare for his funeral, they put together all his garments to dress him, and they look at the yarmulke, and inside the yarmulke it says Bar Mitzvah of John Moses.
Well, I have a neighbor and when Mace used to come over for dinner, he would have one of these yarmulkes on his head. And he approached me one night, he said, listen, he said, you know that guy that comes to your house? Is he like a higher up guy, like a bishop or something?
Wow. So we're going to perhaps get to the idea, and that will explain why men wear the yarmulke, not women. The previous chapters, we will go through a summary soon, but let's talk about the last 3 or 4 chapters from 35 or 37 till 41. The rabbi was speaking about the value of kavana, of intention, of doing it for the right purpose. We discovered different types of kavana. We discovered what happens if there is no kavana. Action counts more than kavana, but without it's like a dead body. The rabbi is now shifting the rest of the Tanya to discuss emotions. And I believe that it's very powerful because it will allow us to understand how to deepen our relationship with God and live a better life between families and men to men. There is a book called Chovat HaLevavot, a very famous book, where the rabbi who authored the book about 400 years ago says that we have many commandments that are dependent on emotions. For example, Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, love God your Lord. Et Hashem Elokecha tira, fear God your Lord. Ve'yareta me'elokecha, ani Hashem, fear God. So there are emotions. The same is about compassion, to have compassion for the orphan, to have compassion for the widow, for the convert, to have compassion for the needy. The Torah tells us not just to help, but to have compassion, to express those feelings. By the way, we're going to, I shared today, we are starting a new JLI, which is fascinating cases throughout history that teach us about how rabbis and how communities live with halacha. In one of the lessons, I believe lesson 3, there is a discussion where the halacha tells us one way, but one time there was a situation where it was dealing with a young girl that due to the fact that she will be so embarrassed and it will hurt her so bad, the rabbi was able to go back to the law, to the source of the law, and be able to dissect it and be able to find how to apply it in that case. In other words, emotions, to feel the compassion, the kindness, the care, to feel the pain of someone is a mitzvah in the Torah, like everything else. Comes the Chovat HaLevavot, this book, and he says, all of the commandments that we need to perform, we have a code of law, except the mitzvot that hang on emotions. How to put on tefillin, how to celebrate Shabbat, how to build a sukkah. You have the exact details, to minutest details. How to love God. Look in code of law, you won't find it. How to fear God, how to have compassion for the orphan. There is nothing of it. And therefore, he went and put a book together called Chovat HaLevavot, the obligation of the heart. Levavot is hearts. Chovah is obligation. That's a book. Anybody heard of that book, Harry? The duties of the heart. Okay. Have you heard of that book? So he wanted to make up for what's missing, and it's very widely studied. Before I got married, before you get married, the custom among Chabad Hasidim is to study certain chapters from Chovat HaLevavot. I study it, chapter 16, 17, and 18, I believe, just to learn how to have compassion for somebody else, just to understand that God is watching, just to understand what my heart purpose and goal, not just to desire food, not just to desire to be respected and honored and cared for, but how to allow myself to share love with somebody and to realize that God is watching. This is the purpose. This is the concentration of the next few chapters. The rabbi is going to share with us how to serve God with the mitzvot that are about emotions, fear, love, and compassion. We are going to call it a child, a son to a father, son or daughter is the same. And I would adopt the trait of compassion, because father and son, the relationship is of compassion. And then the other one is of a servant. Servitude is fear. By the way, whenever I say fear, we do not intend to speak about fear of punishment. That's an inferior level of fear. When I say fear, it refers to respect, awe of the greatness of God. We use the word fear, but it refers to awe. And the last one, which is love, love of God, love of a fellow human being, love of the universe, love of God is going to be the concentration of the next few chapters. So we will discuss in this chapter, there are 4 topics. And chapter 41 is fundamental. And I'll show it you later on how fundamental it is. Number 1, when I serve God, which is first, love or fear of God? Number 2, what does it mean to have concentration when I perform a mitzvah? When I say in the prayer, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, I thank you, God, for sanctifying us with your mitzvah. What do you mean sanctified us? The word sanctified us, kiddushanu, is the rabbi's interpretation. The rabbi is going to teach us about what happens, what intention we need to have, what kavana, when we put on talit and tefillin for men. And finally, the rabbi is going to talk about if I have kavana but no emotions attached to it. Is it any value to it or not?
I mean, you're the kavanah without lishma.
Yeah, kavana without lishma. So we discovered that it's okay. But the rabbi is going to go into the idea of emotions. I just want to share, because to me it's a very powerful point. I should share with you that, I'll be honest with you, in yeshiva we study Tanya every year, but we never reach this chapter. We never reach this point. Because you always, the whole year, you study 15, 18, 20, 25, and then you go back. Next year, you study it deeper, from a deeper point of view. So this is for me new. Now, I study it every year when I say chitas, when I say the daily portion, but I just read it through. I never prepared and studied it deeper. So I get excited, hopefully as much as you are. There is one point that the rabbi is making, and that is the question, to address the question. I'm sharing with you in advance so we can move fast. The question that people are asking, am I able to control my emotions? Am I able to tell you, I need you to fall in love? I need you to love me. Are you able to either you fall in love or not? Either it happens or not. In other words, the heart leads. When I tell you it's time to hate this behavior, this substance, this conduct, it's not right, it's not good, and it's time for you to feel it's disgusting and develop an emotion of distance. Is it possible? In other words, can I have control of my heart when it comes to the emotions? And the rabbi is going to tell us that the reason God gave us those commandments is because he created a heart that can be controlled. The heart can develop emotions either of love or fear. Previously, the rabbi talked about it many, many times. In this chapter, the rabbi is going to bring up that a serious emotional trait require a serious concentration and contemplation, kavana. So if I want to love my spouse, and which I don't have that feeling because she's lousy, she's late, she's whatever, lazy. What we do is we take the time, but it's not in an hour and not in a day, and concentrate over and over about the positive and the blessings. And that will evoke a feeling of love. The same is about the other way. There is a quick fix to feel, to concentrate very quick how bad it is, but it lasts very short-lived. If I want to develop a true, genuine emotion, I need to take the time to concentrate. And the time that I take to concentrate will allow me to develop that type of trait. This is to me one of the keys that the rabbi is going to make here. So when someone says it's impossible, I hate it, it's not for me, it's not true. You are unable to concentrate, to get focused on one concentration for a long time. That may be true. But God created us with the ability to control our emotions. Any questions so far? The Rebbe Rayatz, the previous Rebbe, when he spoke about the introduction to this chapter, he says that the Rebbe is going to talk about 3 traits: love, fear, and compassion. The Rebbe always, the Alter Rebbe, would say, as we'll discover here, love or compassion, the rabbi says you can compromise. He was willing to compromise. In other words, if someone says, I don't have a strong bond with God, I don't love, the rabbi can, but when it comes to respect, awe, and fear of God, there is no compromise. It is an absolute necessity, and as we'll discover, it is the foundation of everything else. You cannot build a relationship, in a moment I'll talk about between humans, with God without the respect and awe of God. Otherwise, whatever you build is a shaky building. Imagine the engineer says you have to put a slab and a foundation so the building will stand strong. If you miss that, you skip it because I want to save on cement, then you can build a building. It looks like a beautiful building, but a little wind will blow it. A little knock, a car will drive into it and it's over. The building will never be able to stand on its own solidly without foundation. The foundation is respect and awe for God. And I share with you full-heartedly that in relationship between a teacher and a student, a mother and a daughter, father and son, spouses, partners, siblings, if it does not start with the respect, there will not be any love. It's fake. It's not true.
Say that even the commandment to love God, God gives us this commandment. If you don't respect him, you're not even going to try to love him.
In other words, you say that before you start loving God, you have to respect God.
Yeah, I think so, because you may not. I mean, God even, I think maybe inherently he knew he wasn't lovable, or there's things that aren't lovable about him, but he wants you to try to love him.
Right.
So then it's a.
So the rabbi already spoke about that, and the rabbi will develop it. But the first thing we need to know is the rabbi is going to make the point that, and the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayat, said that those 3 traits that God had commanded us to perform any mitzvot with, he's willing to compromise. So it's not my words, it's the Rebbe's words, so I'm walking on a solid bridge here. If you don't have complete love of God, if you don't have complete compassion, you can get by. If you do not have respect and awe of God, everything else is shaky, and everything else is temporary. It's iffy. It's not solid. And therefore, the introduction and the start of every service of God must start with the respect of God, which is fear of God. All I said is that in relationship, it's exactly the same way. Yes.
He manifests love or respect.
That's the topic of this the chapter and the next few chapters. The rabbi is going to talk about it. So the first thing is just to understand there are mitzvot that are connected to the heart, and they are God's commandments. And the order, and as I just shared, there is no compromise on fear of God. I think we discussed before about love of God. Last time we discussed that, I want to show something and I forgot. Okay. Let's start chapter 41, page 597. I'm going to read the introduction of the Rabbi because it helps us refresh. As mentioned in the title page of Tanya, this work is based on the verse, "For this thing, loving God, is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it." This is a verse in Deuteronomy. This means that observing the Torah and the mitzvot with one's heart, with a love and fear of God, is very near, within simple reach. The Alter Rebbe devoted the first 25 chapters of his work to an explanation of the role of love and fear, which is awe, in a Jew's divine service. He also explained how they may be readily attained. It is the love of God, wrote the Alter Rebbe, that motivates one to fulfill all the positive mitzvot. In order for a Jew to perform them properly and eagerly, he must be imbued with a love for God and a desire to cleave to Him. For performing them will enable him to cleave to God. If we develop love for God and we want to connect to God, we know the connection to God is through the mitzvot. Similarly, fear of God lies at the root of one's observance of the prohibitive mitzvot. When one stands in true fear and awe of God, he will refrain from transgressing and thereby rebelling against His will. So far what we studied is that love of God assists a man in performing the positive commandments. Fear of God assists a man from staying away from the negative precepts, from those activities that God told us not to do. In the last few chapters, the Alter Rebbe went on to explain that love and fear are the wings that elevate one's mitzvot, causing them to ascend to the sphirot of the upper worlds. Conversely, mitzvot fulfilled without the spiritual intent, fostered by the love and fear of God, are likened to a body bereft of its soul. Right? We studied no kavana, dead body, no soul. Yes, Harry?
Are you asking for my approval?
I'm asking if you remember what this discussion. Good. In chapter 41, the Alter Rebbe now goes on to say that fear of God is the beginning and core of divine service. This is so not only regarding the negative precepts, but also with regards to the positive precepts. In other words, the Rabbi is going to tell us, unlike what we studied until now, that love of God is the motivator, the engine, the fuel for positive commandments, and the fear of God is the engine and fuel for negative commandments. The Rabbi is going to tell us that actually it's not, fear of God is for positive commandments as well. If I want to serve God and do what's right, I need to have fear of God. Nevertheless, the observance of these commands too must be impelled by some measure of fear as well. For avoida is divine service, implies an analogy with the manner in which an Eved servant serves his master. How do you call serving God? Service. I go to service, right? You pray service. When you study Torah, you serve God. It's on the same root of a servant, a slave. A slave does not do only out of love, but he does out of respect. He knows the rules and he has to not break the rules. In other words, all of our relationship with God, even the positive ones, must be based on serving God with respect and fear.
When I was taking a lot of leadership classes, all my jobs and everything, I subscribed to servant leadership. So,
Servant leadership.
And I love that concept because I was serving the people. I wasn't leading. I wasn't bigger or better.
So how many police units, cops would have in their car to serve and protect?
Right.
It doesn't say to protect and serve, because even though protection is more important than serve. Serve and protect. I don't know. I think the Los Angeles Police Department has the serve on every car. It says on every car in italicized letters to serve and protect.
Most police states have the same motto.
which is?
The servant.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So maybe we were, I'm not that well connected.
In the States, once I've been in.
And you have been to quite a few.
But it's the point.
But that's the idea. Thank you. So therefore, service out of fear. Fear of God is therefore the beginning and the mainstay of spiritual service. There is no fun words and tap on your shoulders. We need to understand, you want to connect with God, connect to God. Fear of God is the gateway. Without fear of God, you didn't even start. Here is the Rebbe's words. One must, however, constantly bear in mind what is the beginning of divine service as well as its core and root. I'm not going to dissect every word here because it will take us much longer to cover the entire the chapters. But here, just for one moment, the rabbi calls serving God with fear. It's the beginning, it's the core, and it's the root. So it's the beginning because without fear of God, you didn't even start. It's the core because every single commandment, positive as well as negative, must be imbued with fear of God. And it's the root because when you look at every mitzvah performed out of fear, it has more completeness. It's done right. So it's the root of every mitzvah. The rabbis there is a letter vav here that the rabbi was contemplating for 6 weeks when he added the word vav. It shows us how meticulous every word here. We are just hovering over with nice stories just to get the idea and connect to the topic. I just want you to know that serving God with fear and realizing that that's the start of every service of God is the topic of the Tanya. So I'm going to show you some stories. Just fascinating stories because later on, even though it belongs a little later here, which a part that we're going to cover, but I shouldn't be going to diving too deep. The rabbi is going to share with us that God is watching every moment of our day, and therefore we need to respect God and not embarrass ourselves. The Rebbe would tell people who had fear. There was it's in a letter. A man from Israel, I believe he's a rabbi, could be he was a secular leader, wrote the Rebbe that he has the fear of public speaking. We know that number one fear in the United States is public speaking. Did anybody heard that? What's fear number 2?
Death.
Huh?
Death.
Death is number 2. Which means most people would rather be in the coffin than to speak.
Taxes was so low.
Number 1 is public speaking. Number 2 is death. It's more than fear of dying. So he wrote to the Rebbe that he has the fear of public speaking. And apparently that was part of his role. And the Rebbe said to him, you should be versed in the first page, half of the chapter 41, and constantly verbalize it. He should learn it by heart. So every time he has the fear, he needs to speak up and he's getting anxious, he should realize, pay attention to the words that God is watching over us. And if God is watching over us and he's asking you to perform, to speak, then he gave you the energy. And definitely the fear of humans shouldn't be superior to the fear of God. And with God's fear, you are able to cope. Definitely you can cope with. Also, people who had constant challenges in serving God, the Rabbi would say that they should study this first page, and repeat it every day. So my children, when they study Tanya, they study by heart different chapters, but as soon as we can, we make them jump to 41 and the first page. so that one day they speak Hebrew and they understand what they're saying, they should have it by heart. So every time they come to a challenge, and I don't know about people in the room, but myself, we face challenges all the time, and many times nobody's watching. But if you learn this and discover and realize that God is watching every move, it makes a person stop for a moment and think, is he going to embarrass himself or not? Says the Rebbe, this means, although fear is the root of turn away from evil, and love is the root of do good, that is, fear of God is what basically urges one to refrain from evil and not to transgress the negative precepts, while love of God is what basically motivates one to perform good deeds and positive commands. Says the Rebbe, nevertheless, it is not sufficient to awaken the love alone to do good, but at the very least, before performing the positive command, one must first arouse the innate fear which lies hidden in the heart of every Jew, not to rebel against the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, as has been stated above. So that this fear should manifest itself in his heart, or at least in his mind. The Rabbi is going to talk about different types of fear, but we definitely, before I perform a mitzvah, should stop for a moment, and as we'll see, that's the reason we have the blessings. That's why we say, Baruch Atah Hashem, Asher Kiddushanu B'mitzvotav. In a moment, we'll find out what it means. Stop for a minute and realize I'm serving God, and God is watching, and therefore I'm not going to make it half-half, and I'm not going to rush through, and I'm not going to wish I didn't have to, but I'm going to put my mind and heart into it because that's what God wants. Optimally, a Jew should be able to create a feeling of fear in his heart through meditating upon God's greatness. If, however, this proves to be beyond his capacity, he has not the time for it, he should at least arouse the innate fear which lies hidden in his heart. This degree of fear is attainable to all inasmuch as it does not require such profound meditation. The Rabbi is telling us we can arouse fear of God temporarily with a quick fix, so to say. Realize that it's in our DNA, in our nature. The proper fear and respect of God needs to be motivated, awakened, or created with long meditation. And it takes time, as we'll discover. But the quick one, definitely no one can escape. No one can excuse. This innate fear may be aroused either A, to such a degree that it's actually felt in his heart, or B, if the individual is incapable of evoking palpable fear in his heart, he will at least be able to summon up this innate fear in his mind so that he will be able to apprehend and experience the fear of God intellectually. Says the Rebbe, there are two levels of fear. The proper level, there are three. The proper level of fear is to attain after long concentration. It doesn't come easy, but after meditating for a long time, we have a good understanding, and therefore our heart changes and desires to respect God and to love God. The next one, if I don't have the time or I'm not in the mindset, I can awaken a quick fix, a quick fear of God in my heart. Even if that does not work, intellectually, just to contemplate, God provides me with oxygen. God protected me from a car accident. God provided me with all my talents and all my blessings. And for that, He deserves my respect. So you have an intellectual fear, and it's not an emotional. So this means that in order to arouse within himself the latter category of fear, which is intellectual, he should at least contemplate in his mind the greatness of the Blessed Ein Sof and his kingship. To arouse the former category of fear, that which is palpably felt in the heart, one must engage in one's da'at in profound meditation. He who is unable to do so should contemplate at least superficially God's greatness. In other words, as I said, the desired way is to meditate for a long time until we awake love and fear of God. If that's not attainable, at least the short one, the quick one, before we perform a mitzvah, which extends to all worlds. God extends to all worlds, both higher and lower, bearing in mind that the greater the king's dominion, the more awe it inspires in his subjects. I'm so sorry that in today's days and age, we don't have an example of a king. Kings. Today, you have no respect for nobody. Even if you have the superpower, the leader of the superpower of the universe, the president of the United States, people don't care and don't respect, which is inappropriate on all levels. It doesn't matter which party. Once a person is elected, he is the president of all of us. Even if I disagree with his agenda, it doesn't matter. As long as he bears the hat of a president or a leader, the same as Prime Minister of Israel. We don't have kings. The places that we have it is dictatorship. And it's a place, there is no human rights. We shouldn't go there. We shouldn't be in those places. But in Morocco, for example, the closest that I can think of, the king is loved by the people. It's a very exceptional rule. The family of the royal family is always treating the rest of the population in the least abusive way. The rule over there is if the king is passing through the street and you open the window and you look at the window, they come and kill you. They shot you. Simple as that. I had friends that were there for 2 years. When I was sent to California, they were sent to Morocco for 2 years to yeshiva, shlichut. And there are many, many rules, even though the Jews are very well respected and loved by the people. But if the king is around and you want to see the king, you have to go outside and stand by the door or by the yard. You're not allowed to sit on a chair. You're not allowed to peek from the window because that's disrespecting the king. So the rabbi here is going to give us examples of contemplating about going to visit the king. The Tsar was a true king, and ministers, before they come to see him, they would shiver. They would be very afraid because they know one thing they do that they hear, Kim Jong-un. As soon as he don't like the defense minister, his own wife, his sister, it's like that. He's a king. That's a king, so that as much as he loves you and respects you and is depending on you and he appoints you to a very high position, your life is underlined continuously, because if the moment he's not in a bad mood, it's over. That's what the rabbi. Why are you laughing?
It just sounds like you're right.
It's the truth. How many times and he does not kill them in a simple way. It's has to be very cruel. I don't know if you heard about missiles. He put, I believe, his brother or someone very close, or his father. I'm not Kim Jong-un, and he had not a firing squad, but a big missile. Huh?
Yeah.
Yes, David, am I correct?
And poison people and all kinds of things.
The king of North Korea,
The president or whatever he calls himself.
an extremely evil. But that's the idea of kings. So that when the rabbi is going to talk about the arousing fear of God, he will compare that to a king, because it's the only example you can have. Today, we don't have kings. Thank God we live in a free universe where we don't have evil people rule over others. Says the Rebbe, and let him further consider that he fills all worlds, animating them with an indwelling life force that created beings can experience and comprehend, and encompasses all worlds. That is, he also animates them with a life force that transcends the experience and comprehension of created beings. As it is written, do I not fill heaven and earth? So we study Memale Sovev. God fills all the universes equally. Yet he leaves aside the creatures of the high worlds and the creatures of the lower worlds. Neither the higher nor the lower creatures represent the Creator's ultimate intention. He therefore does not bestow his kingship upon them, so that he be called their God and King. Rather, he uniquely bestows his kingship upon his people Israel in general, for God is known as King of Israel, and upon him in particular, the individual. For a man is obligated to say, "For my sake was the world created." The Talmud teaches us that every one of us needs to consider it as if he is the pinnacle of the universe. And everything that's created, all the invention, all the benefits, everything we see, it's just for me. Because God is counting on me for certain things that no one else can perform. I am here in a period of time, surrounded by people, given certain talents, because no one is assigned my job. There is no duplication. So that there will be, in 5,000 years, in 100,000 years, there will never be another human being like me. Therefore, God left or pays no attention to all other parts of the huge creation, so that he pays attention. Am I performing? So I can be a very small screw in the huge machine, but a critical screw. If that screw, the screw is nobody pays attention to it, because there are big wheels, there are belts, there are different kinds of parts that are much more fascinating. But that screw, if is missing or is not tied properly, the whole machine is not able to function. And that's the idea. So there was, in a JLI I shared many years ago, that we are so self-centered, unfortunately, that we think that everything is created for us. And just imagine, picture yourself in a house, and then it's a presentation that goes out of you into the house, from the house to your street, from the street to your city, from your city to your state, from your state to your country, and to the continent. And then we go out of the universe, and you go up to the space. And from space, you go to the Milky Way. And the Milky Way, this globe, this universe, is a small speckle. Then you see that the Milky Way, compared to other galaxies, is just a little brush stroke. And all that was created by God, but yet my doing or not doing is very valuable to God. And that is something, when contemplating for a long time, helps a person to have respect for God. A Jew should remind himself that the whole purpose and intent of creation vis-a-vis God's sovereignty relates to himself specifically, that God becomes king over him. God wants to be my king. Well, I accept God, and God says, I want you to fear me and love me. That's how I become your king. If I don't have time for it, because I don't care, because I'm not in the mood, it doesn't make me feel good, God says, why aren't you accepting me as your king? That's what makes Rosh Hashanah so valuable. Says the Rebbe, continue the Rebbe, the realization that God bestows his kingship upon each individual, in particular, touches a responsive chord within one. He is then more apt to demand of himself that he accept the heavenly yoke, and for his part accept his kingship, God's kingship upon himself, that he be king over him, to serve him and do his will in all kinds of servile work. So what the Rebbe, this acceptance of the yoke of divine service is required of all Jews. There is no exception, male or female. There is no exception for each mitzvah or when, day or night, accepting God's yoke, realizing that God has created myriads of angels, universes, objects, creatures. It's all great and fine, but he wants me to make him the king. By how? By serving him, with studying Torah, with the mitzvot, if I can contemplate on that, then I do serve God with the yoke of God, with the fear. So up to last week, we talked about kavana, the intention. I'm doing it to serve God. Here we're coming to the fear and love of God that is a crucial part of every part of my day and every part of serving God. We discovered last week, this is the last lesson, which I think is very powerful, that mitzvah of love God is to motivate us to do other mitzvot. Anybody remember that? Every mitzvah is for an end in itself. Love and fear of God are a mitzvah to motivate us to serve God. In other words, God says, fear God, love God, but the reason is that you are able to perform all the mitzvot. The Rebbe will do a little bit more. The Rebbe points out that the Alter Rebbe will now go on to say that the above meditation aimed at awakening innate awe in one's mind does not suffice. An individual must also realize that God not only bestows his kingship upon him in a general manner, but that he also does so in, so to speak, personal manner, as in the Alter Rebbe's words. The Rebbe points out that God is not the king of the country and I'm part of the country. I enjoy it and I pay taxes, etc. Therefore, that's the extent of my relationship to the king. My relationship is God is looking individually at my conduct and my behavior. Says the Rebbe, and this is a verse that all children in the Chabad community know by heart. It's one of the 12 verses that we all say. And behold, God himself stand over him, and the whole world is full only with his glory, and not only being omnipresent does he see everything, but moreover, he scrutinizes him in particular, and searches his reins and heart, that is, his innermost thoughts and emotions, to see if he is serving them as is fitting. And therefore he must serve in his presence with awe and fear. That is, note the Rebbe, that not merely like one who is located in the king's domain, but moreover like one standing before the king. Imagine you are in the palace standing before the king. At that moment you cannot just speak, you cannot just walk, you cannot just be dressed the way you like, but with great respect. And therefore we need to understand that that's the way God is expecting us to live our life. By the way, that's the reason Hasidim always wear those garbs. You ask yourself, for what reason? It's summertime. After all, just let go. And the reason is to remind us that God is watching. That's the reason I wear long pants. Believe me, I would love to walk with shorts. I really would love it. It will make my life so much. So therefore, a chassid is someone who wants to carry on the idea that God is watching throughout the day. And therefore, he's dressed respectfully. How much more so when one comes to synagogue to stand before God and he utter words to God, you are my Lord, you are my Father, that they should be dressed properly. That's why people put a head covering when they walk into synagogue, because that's the idea of a yarmulke. Yarmulke became a symbol of Judaism because the yarmulke is to remind us that God is watching over us. Who needs that reminder? Men, the boys. The women, if they are married.
I know the reason, but I also think that's another reason too.
What's the other reason?
Well, I'm just saying, that's just me,
I would like to hear. I would appreciate learning. You cover your head when you come. So there is nothing inappropriate with that. Can I share with you the devil's advocate? Can I share with you how I feel? And I don't mean to disagree with you. So there are two things that stuck. First, I grew up in a place where everybody is very observant, and yet unmarried women walk into synagogue and they go to synagogue every Shabbat, and they pray together at seminar or high school, etc., and they don't cover their head. And I don't think that that means that they are doing an inferior job. The other point I want to share is that every time you see a painting of Moses, Aaron, you see them with head covering, if it's Jewish. Michelangelo, who cares, Michelangelo? But King David, Michelangelo put King David without clothes altogether. So it's, but the idea of wearing a yarmulke had started not long ago in Jewish history, maybe 450 years ago. Up to that point, people would cover their body, meaning their faces, when they prayed. Rabbis realized that the descent of generations is causing some people to forget about God.
What is
Men,
causing it?
to forget about God,
What is, what?
the day-to-day life. So that's where they instituted the idea of yarmulke. But it's not it's not a Torah, it's not a mitzvah. Do you understand that? So therefore, there is a discussion today if a toupee is kosher as a yarmulke. Well, why are you laughing? It shouldn't be so funny. We had a man here with a toupee, and he said he asked me to inquire, and I don't want to show it to the ruling, but a toupee can be served as a yarmulke because it's a head covering. There's no mitzvah to do that. It's the idea to remind us that God is watching, that there is somebody above us. And men need that fear of heaven a lot more.
So, but it's an expectation. like
It's a
here.
tradition.
Right.
It's a tradition.
It's-
It's a custom. It's a custom. But, okay, so here comes to play the other rule in Torah. Anytime a custom is accepted by majority of Jews for a period of time, it becomes obligatory. Okay, so today it's a whole different story. Today there is no chance, there is no choice. Someone who does not wear a yarmulke, especially in synagogue, we call it defying God, disrespecting the tradition. But I'm going to the root where it all started from is that there is no mitzvah. To wear a talis, there is a mitzvah, you say a blessing. To wear a yarmulke, you don't say a blessing. There's no blessing.
A proper yarmulke should have like 2 layers.
That's because you know Daniel and he shared that with you. The Hasidic way is to have 2 layers, to have a liner.
You're starting to say twice now that men have to have this reminder, but
Right.
women do not. What were you going to say?
No, all I'm going to say is that's the fact of life. Men needs to have more control, and therefore the tradition is for the men to wear a yarmulke. Linda was the opinion that even women, when they come to pray, I think, should wear a yarmulke, and it's a welcome.
Because like you say, it's a custom, whatever the custom. I'm
Right.
just saying that I think.
It's a way of serving God.
I'm not saying everybody has to do it.
Well, and conservative married women wear like a.
Some type of doily, yes.
I was told not only some respect, you can't say blessing without a kippah. You can't say it, you can't.
It became part of the tradition, but if you go, there is no law to wear a yarmulke. I'm sorry, I'm not stopping. I'm not convincing you to not wear a yarmulke. God forbid. All I'm saying to you is the reason today the symbol of Judaism is expressed in yarmulke is because the introduction to serving God is with fear, and therefore fear will be resting upon humans when they wear something that reminds them God is watching. That's all.
And part of what I
So
say-
don't think for a moment that there is an allowance not to wear a yarmulke. If someone says to me, I come to synagogue and I wear shorts, where I grew up, in a community where I grew up, they would kick him out. They would say to him, it's disrespect for God. But in kibbutzim, in Moshavim in Israel where they are farmers and they really walk in the field and it's very difficult. They walk into synagogue with shorts. So it depends on the place. Yarmulke is not up to discussion. It's if someone walk in to pray, meaning they want to bond with God, they cannot do it unless they wear a yarmulke, because the yarmulke is the introduction. It symbolizes respect for God. You have no respect for God, you are unable to connect to God, to serve God. Harry, did I help you? Does it help?
That if you cannot say anything that having yarmulke.
Not just prayer, but blessings as well. Correct. Thank you very much for pointing it out. So anytime, lighting the Shabbat candles.
The women I knew always covered their head.
They cover their heads?
But that was how I grew up, where the women were covering, they put even a towel.
A doily or something.
What?
A doily or a scarf, which is because they want to express their fear of God, their respect and awe of God. So it's a welcome tradition, but it's not part of the Jewish tradition. That's the distinction I'm trying to make. So we will stop right there and continue, God willing, next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, everybody, and good night.